Indonesia, home to more than 200 million people, 600 ethnics, and Asian biggest economy with gross domestic product of more than 1 trillion US dollar. For the past 3 years, Indonesia economy was prospering until a highly contagious virus attacked the republic. In this video, we will discuss Indonesia economy before and after the attack of COVID-19 and how to handle the economic crisis that happened. One of the most popular economic growth measurement is the real GDP growth. Talking about Indonesia, their GDP growth was stable for the past decade. The highest recorded growth was at 6.4% and the lowest was at 4.9%. We can say that their average economic growth is around 5%. However, in early of 2020 was a nightmare, not only for Indonesia, but for all humankind in this world. The infamous COVID-19 spread throughout the world, including Indonesia, the home of Garuda. Indonesia has the biggest COVID-19 outbreak in Southeast Asia. As of yesterday, it had reported more than 900,000 cases and 25,000 deaths. Jakarta accounts for a quarter of the infection. In order to control the spread of the virus, on 31st of March 2020, Jokowi, the president of Indonesia, signed into a law government regulation number 21/2020, which regulated the movement of the people, and it was called Pembatasan Sosial Berskala Besar, or in English, Large Scale Social Restriction, PSBB. This will allow the regional governments to restrict the movement of the people and goods in and out of their respective locality. Among the impact of COVID-19 are household spending and investment are falling. According to Fitch, household spending is lower because many people are losing jobs during this turbulent time. In order to understand this further, let us use the three equation model to explain Indonesia's situation. Initially, Indonesia's economy is at bliss point A, or we can call it the pre-COVID-19 era. Early in 2020, COVID-19 attacked ASEAN biggest country. PSBB started to enforce. People started losing their job. Of course, when people lose their job, they will spend less. And investors at the same time become cautious and invest less. What happened next? Surprise, but not so surprised. IS curve shift to the left. Point to remember, IS curve shift when autonomous consumption or autonomous investment or even government spending change, or when a multiplier changes too. In Indonesia case, as we mentioned earlier, household spending and investment are falling. That's why the IS shift to the left. When all this happened, inflation also at the same time decreased. Lower inflation doesn't necessarily mean a good sign, but it can be a signal to a low demand and slow economic growth, like what happened in Indonesia. Moreover, lower inflation can cause higher unemployment. If we look from this graph, inflation started to decline early of April. As we mentioned before, this is the time where government enforced PSBB. This is the time where people started losing their job. And this is where is the time investments start to shrink. Now we come to the focal point of this presentation. How to bring back prosperity back to Indonesia. We can divide the solution into two categories. The first is fiscal policy solution, and the second category is monetary policy solution. Let's talk about the fiscal policy first. There are several ways the government can shift back the IS curve back to the right. And the most common way is by increasing the government spending. By doing this, the economy will be stimulated and the IS curve will shift back to the right. For your information, Indonesian government will prepare 186.3 billion 186.3 billion to fight the pandemic, with a large chunk of the spending allocated to infrastructure, education, and healthcare. Government can introduce less strict commerce law to attract investors. This is what Jokowi did last year, where he signed the controversial omnibus law to increase investment. Why is so controversial? According to Indonesian Trade Union Confederation, they said the law could reduce the value of severance pay as well as implement exploitative working hours. The third solution, the government can cut tax to induce spending. In Indonesia, corporate income tax will be reduced from 25% to 22% for the year 2020 and 2021, and will be further reduced to 20% starting 2022. By doing this, Indonesia can create a more open business climate and attract foreign funds. Ladies and gentlemen, last but not least, monetary policy. Monetary policy can influence the IS curve too. How? By cutting the interest rates. Let's look back at the graph. Bank Indonesia, BI, the Central Bank of Indonesia, cuts the interest rate to R0 in order to achieve output 1, or in the graph Y1, and interest 1, or pi 1. The lower R0 increase interest, and a Y above equilibrium, YE, or in the graph you can refer it as point C. The BI focus the PC curve for period 2 to be PC pi 2 E equal pi 1. So now the optimal point is D. To achieve D, R0 is increased to R1. Now the economy moves to point D as demand increases from lower R. The same process repeats and repeats, and R is gradually increased until the economy reaches its equilibrium Z, given by pi T, YE, and RS.
In Indonesia, unemployment rate measures the number of people actively looking for a job as a percentage of the labor force. The unemployment rate in Indonesia surged to 7.07% in the third quarter 2020 from 5.28% in the same quarter a year earlier, amid the economic downturn caused by the coronavirus crisis. The number of unemployed persons surged by 2.6 million to 9.77 million. So the government can use WSPS model. The WS curve define wage setting behavior. It depicts the influence of the unemployment situation on the real wage rate that the wage setting process generates. The institution is that firms feel compelled to offer higher real wage, and the that workers and union demand higher real wage when the labor market is tight than when it is slack. So by contrast to models with perfectly competitive labor markets, a distinction is made between labor supply and wage setting. So in the relationship of a natural disaster and exchange rate, the natural disaster epidemics could be one of the factors causing disruption in the economy, including the rupiah exchange rate. Indonesia is at a geographically location that is at high risk of being affected by natural disasters such as earthquakes. This really affects the exchange rate of the rupiah. The exchange rate of the rupiah against between labor supply and wage setting. So in the relationship of a natural disaster and exchange rate, the natural disaster epidemics could be one of the factors causing disruption in the economy, including the rupiah exchange rate. Indonesia is at a geographically location that is at high risk of being affected by natural disasters such as earthquakes. This really affects the exchange rate of the rupiah. The exchange rate of the rupiah against the US dollar may weaken due to the disaster. But now, the government has prepared solutions to cope with disaster or epidemics that occur in Indonesia to prevent the rupiah from getting worse. One of the ways is handling COVID-19 that currently happening through implementing large-scale social restrictions with the enactment of the dysregulation. It is hoped that Indonesia will soon recover from the COVID-19 outbreak and the Indonesia economy can improve again. So based on the description analysis in the World Bank analysis, Bank Indonesia, we can look at the relationship between COVID-19 and rupiah exchange rate. When the increasing number of COVID-19 cases happen in Indonesia, the exchange rate of rupiah to the US dollar become weaker. The government should seriously handle the COVID-19 case in Indonesia so that this pandemic will end quickly and all sectors of the economy will recover. This is expected to reduce imports and increase exports so that foreign exchange reserve such as US dollars increase and the rupiah exchange rate will strengthen. So kind of a model for macroeconomy in this situation. The government would like to choose the role of a banker in the three equation model and Dornbush model of budgeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to conclude that a proactive government, effective minister, and responsible citizen can save the country. That's all from us. Thank you.